Let's talk with Laura, who's calling in from England. Laura, you are live on Talk Heathen. What's up?
Oh, hi, Dan and MG. I've seen you on the Truth Wanted and Objectively Dan on here. I think you're both awesome, and you've handled the calls really well. Like,
Thank you.
My universe. That's been quite a show. Yeah, so being a woman myself, and I know I'm not in the UK, USA, I'm from England, and we have great abortion rights, and I just feel like my heart goes out to every woman in the USA right now, because it's a very sad day for your country, and I feel so bad for them. But what it is I have a mild form of mental illness called bipolar type 2, where it means your extremes of moods are a little bit higher or lower than normal. And when I was 17, I got pregnant, and I think I was about 7 weeks. So it was early, and I am thankful that it was early. And I made the choice to have an abortion, because I think people with mental illness, if they're struggling to look after themselves in the world, how the hell can they be expected to look after a child? And it's not fair. And what about the people in your country with mental illness that wouldn't be able to raise a child due to their health or any other reason? They should have the right. And I just feel terribly sorry for the state of your laws in your country. If there was a way for the USA and UK governments to get together and you could come over here and have an abortion, that would be great. We could do something like that. But yeah, it's just it's so unfair. And I'm really lucky that being in my country in England, that I had the choice to be able to end my pregnancy due to mental illness, that I couldn't take care of a child. And I think men getting involved with men making these decisions for women is terrible. And I'd like your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I'll just start by saying, empires rise and fall, right? Like, we often think that the rights that we have are a given, but the truth is they're not. The truth is that they are fought for, and they have to be fought for every day to ensure that we continue to have these rights, because they can be taken away. And we've already, of course, seen this happen this week, and we may see it happen for other rights, such as the rights for same-sex marriage, the rights for access to contraception, and other rights as well that seem to be on the table, on the chopping block, so it seems. And with that in mind, it just means that we have to continue to talk about these issues, continue raising hell about it until we can make that change. I mean, the American tradition is based on raising hell, right? It's based on it's based on complaining and being a Karen and saying, hey, we actually don't want this to be the way that we live our lives. For better or worse, that's how Americans have gotten stuff done, and that's how a lot of rights have been fought for in this country. So I expect that this will continue to be the tradition as we move along here and see what happens next. But unfortunately, right now, it doesn't seem that there's a clear pathway to guarantee the rights of every American citizen across the country. Yeah.
You know, if there is an exception in your law about people with mental illness, and if their rights are different from ending their pregnancy.
So yeah, there's the only ones I'm aware of, at least for like Texas, is medical complications that happen during birthing process, but there's no exceptions for rape. There's no exceptions for incest. There's no exceptions for all these things. And yeah, and I believe that's the case for most other states as well that currently have these restrictions on abortions.
Oh, that's well, I feel so bad for women in the USA.
Yeah.
Well, Laura, I think the thing that you're probably thank you for sharing. First of all, and you're kind of preaching to the choir a little bit with your stance, which we always appreciate. But I think the closest thing to what you're talking about is the capability of a person to make decisions and understand the consequences of those decisions. So we usually call that in the medical field consent and capacity, which means that, you know, we don't really base it on whether you have a diagnosis of a mental illness. You know, someone can have the capacity to make a decision about their care, about, like, for instance, whether or not to have an abortion, whether or not they have a mental illness or any other kind of illness, right?
Or
you could make a good argument that some... Right. Yeah, you could make the argument that some people who are capable of becoming pregnant are perhaps not capable of understanding the consequences of that pregnancy, and therefore may not have the, you know, we may not seek their consent for any procedure, whether it's abortion or otherwise. But it really doesn't, like, to me as a healthcare practitioner, it doesn't have anything to do with any particular diagnosis someone has. It has to do with whether or not they can foresee the consequences of the decisions they make and understand them. So I think I get where you're coming from, but I feel a little bit iffy about any blanket statement that says if you have a mental illness diagnosis, then you...
no, I completely understand.
You know,
it should be whether any woman who's just feels that whether they're mentally ill or not, that they feel that they couldn't raise the child themselves. It should be that they should have that right.
Yeah, and I totally... The other thing that I want to say is I totally hear where you're coming from. We shouldn't allow men to be making these decisions, and I think in a lot of cases that's what's happening. But I also think there's a lot of women who are making these decisions for other women as well, and are in the pro-life movement, we'll say, or the forced birth movement. So it's not just men, although it's predominantly men, I think, in the States.
Yeah, nobody else should have, nobody except the individual should have the right to be making choices for anybody else's business. It's not their business.
Some of which are women who have had abortions before and don't believe that other people should have them, which is probably the most frustrating out of it. But they have retroactively decided that, oh, what they did was actually bad and that nobody else should be able to do it. And of course, the richest in our society, the people with the most access to resources, you know, they're still going to be able to fly to another state and probably make those connections happen and make it happen. The people who are going to be affected the most by this are the people with the least amount of resources. Yeah, the people, the poorest in our country, and that's always statistically been true. Even now, I shouldn't say now because it's not anymore, but even when abortion was illegal or was legal across this country, it still affected the most poor in this country as far as access. And so now that's going to be just multiplied. So it's quite a terrible situation. It's quite a terrible situation. But we really appreciate you calling in and giving your support.
Thank you so much. And you've handled all the calls amazingly. And I watch a lot of the ACA, Truth Wanted and ObjectivelyDan. You're doing great. And I thank you for everything, and take care.
Thank you, Laura. We really appreciate you calling in. And we wouldn't be able to do these shows if it weren't for viewers like yourself who support us. So thank you for your support as well. You had something you want to say there, MD? Or
no. Okay. I just want to say thank you to Laura. It's good to hear from women on this issue. I don't think we've had a female caller on this issue this episode.